This meeting is now live, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you. Right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of Boston Borough Council's Corporate and Community Committee, which is being held to consider the call-in of a cabinet decision. My name is Councillor Stephen Woodliff, and I am the chairman of this committee, and Councillor George Corner is my vice chairman. As with all virtual meetings, and to help anyone viewing the meeting to recognise who is attending, we will now take a roll call of attendees. Jeanette, please will you take the roll call?
Thank you, Chairman. Could attendees please indicate verbally that they are present? I'll start with the committee. Councillor Tom Ashton.
Present.
Councillor Alison Austin.
Present.
Councillor Peter Bedford.
Present.
Councillor Alan Bell.
Present.
Councillor Anton Danny.
Present.
Councillor Anne Dorian.
Present.
Councillor Neil Hasty.
Present.
Councillor Frank Pickett. Councillor Pickett.
I'll move. Yeah, present.
Thank you. Councillor Judith Skinner.
Present.
And yourself, Chairman, Councillor Stephen Woodliff.
Yes, I'm present.
There is also another member present who signed the call-in request form, who is not on the committee. Councillor Paul Goodale, are you there?
Present.
Chairman, we also have 3 non-committee members who wish to participate at the appropriate stage of the meeting. Councillors Judith Wellborn.
Present.
Councillor Brian Rush. Councillor Rush.
Oh, well.
Present.
Good. Excellent.
And Councillor Peter Watson.
Present.
We also have the portfolio holder, Councillor Nigel Welton.
Present.
Thank you. And the officers present are the Deputy Chief Executive for Strategy, Tim Leader.
Good evening.
Evening. And the Assistant Director for Assets and Lead Officer for the committee, Andy Fisher.
Present, Chairman.
And myself, Jeanette Collier, clerk to this committee. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeanette. Right now, we will now move to part 1 of the agenda, the preliminary items. And the first one is to receive apologies for absence and notice of any substitutions, if any. Jeanette.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. There are apologies for absence from Councillor Deborah Evans, and I received notice that Councillor Judith Skinner is attending as her substitute. I've also received notice that Councillor Alison Austin and Peter Bedford are filling the vacant independent seats on the committee tonight. Thank you.
And I think we've received a apologies from Councillor George Corner as well, haven't we?
I do apologise. Yes.
Right.
Thank you, Chairman.
Let's note that because that's important. I don't want it. Let's get that to the missed on. Right. Second part. Does anyone have any interest to declare in respect of the item on this agenda? Anybody have an interest to declare in respect of the item on this agenda? Yes.
Chairman, Councillor Paul Goodale is indicating.
Right. Paul?
Thank you, Chairman. Just basically to declare, well, it's an interest. I'm a member of the town board, so that for clarity.
Thank you. Right. Now I'll carry on. Jeanette, I'll carry on. Thank you.
Yes.
That concludes the preliminary items, and we'll now move into part 2 of the agenda, the sole business of this meeting. That is the call-in of a cabinet decision relating to PE 21, the next steps. If you turn to page 2, the decision that's being called in is set out there. It is decision 3. That the Deputy Chief Executive, bracket strategy, be authorised to communicate to the Principal of Boston College that the Council is minded to enter into an agreement to lease for the Jeff Mulder Centre in order to facilitate the development of the college's Mayflower Centre project. Now, the procedures for the meeting are set out at the start of the agenda pack, and so, following those, I would like to start by inviting the author of the Cabinet Report, Tim Leader, the Deputy Chief Executive of Strategy, to briefly present the report and background. Welcome to the meeting, Mr. Leader.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'll make this brief.
Thank you.
Around about 6 weeks ago, I was tasked by the Chief Executive to deliver the PE 21 project as part of the Council's strategy for regeneration in Boston. Now, the PE 21 project has a special significance because it also is a critical component of the Council's evolutionary towns funds bid. I say evolutionary because, of course, it hasn't yet been approved by the Council, but it's taking shape, and we've had to put it into a state such that it's capable of being presented to the Secretary of State in October. So we've had to get on with it. Now, I made it my business to review where we'd got to with PE 21 by first of all convening a meeting of all of the officers who've had a part in shaping the proposal, and by reading all of the documentation I could get my hands on that helped me understand the state of this particular scheme. And as you will have seen from my report, to get to the point, that my assessment was this is an exciting and attractive project, but that an awful lot of work needs to be done very quickly to put sufficient flesh on the bones of the concept so as to be able to persuade the Secretary of State that when he comes to consider the Council's Towns Fund bid, it's investable, and that we will therefore be successful in securing up to £25 million worth of investment in infrastructure that is available to us, at least in principle. And in addition to that, I have an eye to the future, which is that if we're not successful in securing as much Towns Fund investment as we need to get the public sector flagship projects away, I need to have a fallback plan whereby I can tell the Council, well, all right, we weren't successful in some or all respects, but we have in any event a plan that will see this very important, quite conspicuous 10-acre town centre site regenerated successfully with housing and retail and other uses in the near future, because it's stayed as a rather underused area, falling to some physical decay for several years now. So that's it really, Chairman. My brief to get this project energised, move it forwards, and the particular decision that you call in, I ought to address, I suppose, quickly. As part of the provisional master plan that was produced by AR Regeneration, you will have seen reference to a project to be advanced by various parts of the NHS, which is for the resiting and combination of 3 doctors' practices and the outpatients service of the Pilgrim Hospital. Now, they want to bring that particular set of practices together on one site, and they would like to co-locate it with a new leisure facility so that we have something called a health and wellbeing centre focused on the town centre, drawing in people to do different things, moving away from retailing, getting some footfall into the town centre, but basically repurposing it is a rather fancy phrase that's used. Now, one of the drivers of that combined facility is obviously health, but the other driver is the development of skills, because we have on the site of the existing Jeff Mulder Centre, or rather around the site of the existing Jeff Mulder Centre, as you know, the main campus of Boston College, and they wish to develop a facility to help improve our ability to educate and upskill the town's adults. Boston having a particularly low score in the extent to which its population benefits from high levels of skills and skills training. And that is to be provided, they hope, in something called the Mayflower Centre, a fantastic concept, but one which has to be funded through the town's fund. So what I needed to do in order to give the college the confidence that it should at least start work is to be able to say to it, because they asked the question directly, look, if you say to us, are we prepared in principle to consider providing you with a site, the site being the Jeff Mulder Centre's site? The answer is, in principle, we are. And the reason for that, of course, is it is to be matched by a replacement facility, in principle, within the town centre in the health and well-being scheme that I've just described. So I suppose the key point is this, if you like, and I'll be quiet when I've just said this last bit. The point of my third recommendation was not to make a decision to provide the college with the site of the Mayflower Centre. It's to say, well, as a matter of principle, we're prepared to say that that is something the council will contemplate. Of course, it's contingent upon all manner of things, one of which is, of course, both the college and the NHS getting their hands on the town's fund monies that they've asked for, or will be asking for, in the town's fund bid document, assuming the council approves it. Chairman, I hope that that is a reasonably succinct summary of my report.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. That is indeed a very good synopsis, I suppose, of the plans that you have in mind. And that's very helpful to us. I think since it's now the turn of the four members who signed the call-in notice to explain their reasoning for calling this decision, that is myself, Councillor Dorian, Councillor Goodale and Councillor Bedford. Since I headed that form, I better start the ball rolling by illustrating my position on it, really. The first thing I'm going to say actually, but relates to scrutiny itself, because the corporate peer challenge for Boston Borough Council, which was conducted, I think, was it last year, maybe, established that our scrutiny function, which is focused on pre-decision scrutiny, works well and is widely seen as constructive and adding value to policy development. So what we're doing tonight is a very positive activity, and it shows the strength of what we do here in Boston, and it works well. Now, I've looked through a lot of the information we have, the P21 master plan, the town's plan, and a lot of other documents actually. And whilst I can read that it says that the Jeff Mulder Leisure Centre requires significant capital investment to extend its life or replacement, there's nothing in the information that I have in front of me that says that a new leisure complex in the town centre will be able to deliver the same or better facilities. There's nothing in it that says there's going to be a new swimming pool, for instance. Now, I've looked at costings for swimming pools, and they are pretty horrendous. I expect you've probably done the same thing. And I've noticed that Sandwell's building a new swimming pool and complex. It's 60 million. Derby's new swimming pool and complex, which is under construction, is 42 million. Reading's new pool and complex is 40 million. They are big sums of money, and 25 million is not even really half, well, just about half of it, isn't it? So to replace a pool with a complex, which is going to be health and based on all the other things, is a huge amount of money, far in excess of the town plans budget, which is 25 million if we get it. Now, We are very concerned about process here. I want to be sure that if, for instance, we pass the Jeff Moulder site over to the college, as for the very good reasons you have supplied, yes, that the townspeople will already have a better facility on site. They will already have that top class pool and facilities and health centre there. Once that's done, of course, then there will be no point in having the Jeff Moulder pool. But I don't want to go down the pathway of saying, well, we will in practice pass over the Jeff Moulder site, and then that disappears on the promise that sometime in the future, a swimming pool and facilities will appear in the centre. And I've looked through the documentation about PE21, which is, of course, is a subset, you like, of the town's plan. The town's plan seems to incorporate the PE21 structure, which is, or the way it seems from the documentation. So within that, there's nothing about a pool, a swimming pool. Now, this council rescued the swimming pool in 2011. When I came on the council in 2011, the Jeff Moulder pool was in need of assistance, and the council at the time did find the money in conjunction with the Witham Schools Federation to rebuild the Jeff Moulder pool and to bring it back to working order. So that was a major success for us as a council, and it cost a lot of money, but it was done. And from our point of view, my point of view, I want to be sure that a town of this nature doesn't lose a facility just because it might be coming out of date. The other thing is that I want to point out is I obviously looked through the documentation we were supplied, and I noticed that the meeting for the 16th of December 2019, the full council meeting, Appendix 3, Agenda Item 7, states it expected that the scrutiny committee, or which to scrutinize the town investment programs, etc. That's all of what we're doing here. And that it's recommended that Boston Borough Council explores innovative delivery models, which have a long-term financial sustainability by providing an ongoing revenue stream. Yeah. So there has to be funding all the way through this project if it's to be successful. And your report points out, doesn't it, that there's no certainty of that. I looked at, is it agenda items, paragraph 7 and 8 in your report to the cabinet, doesn't it? It says that things are fairly dicey, really. There's no certainty of financial support for this. It's not possible to state who wishes to provide precisely what, where, and when, at what cost, when it will look like, and where the money will come from. It complicates matters in several ways. So the financial support for any of these plans is very hazy. And I think that the townspeople particularly will be very concerned to learn that their pool and their facilities and Jeff Moulder Leisure Centre were under threat without a suitable replacement on stream. I could go on, and I'm not going to go on. Other people want to speak. So that's my take on it. I would not oppose a development, there, but I want to be certain that there's a replacement in situ, in place, before we go down that pathway. And that's the key. I want to be sure that there's a replacement pool and a replacement, a better pool, better facilities already there. If you like to be flexible in construction there, so that public and the town know that they're not being shortchanged. They're not losing facility just to promote something. Right.
I'm so sorry. I'm not familiar with your procedure. Do I just keep silent and then deal with things compendiously if invited to? Do you wish to have a response? I'm so sorry, Chairman. I should have checked before we start.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, Tim. It's I think it's the sheet I've got in front of me. If I work on that, is that it says the 4 members explain their reasons for the calling decision, and then it says here at the end, thank you. It's now for us 4 members to ask Councillor Welton and Miss Leader any questions they may have about the cabinet decision. And I suspect that probably when you respond. But if you want to respond after each person, I think we would all be very happy with that. That seems a bit simpler, doesn't it?
It does, Chairman. So if I were to make a brief response, I can absolutely understand.
I wouldn't be happy with that, Chairman.
All right, okay.
All right.
I have an opponent. I have to.
I'll be quiet, Chair.
I am the servant of the committee, Mr. Leader, and I have to do as I'm told. So I will follow the procedure in front of me, okay, and I will pass it on to the next person. I do apologise for that.
No, I'll take a careful note then, Chairman. That's the thing, isn't it?
But I have to follow the order right now. So the next person in line is Councillor Dorian. Jeanette, can you bring up Councillor Dorian?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I do have it in front of me, and all the calling signatories, I'm sure, like me, have prepared a couple of bullet points, and we'll probably have a number of questions that no doubt Mr. Leader is anxious to answer, perhaps before we've even asked them. So I appreciate your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I apologise, Councillor Dorian.
Okay, so the reason that I called in the decision was the lack of consultation with other members of the council and other members of the public for such a huge decision to be voted through in a matter of minutes, Mr. Chair. I thought was quite appalling. Now, once again, the documents for that cabinet meeting were untimely. They didn't meet the requirements of the Constitution, and that's not the first time it's happened. It's really not good enough. The presentation that was then put forward spoke to detail that I had never heard of, and certainly I've never read of in any of the reports that are available at the moment. And so I'd be curious to find out a little bit more about that detail. I think the governance issues are very serious. It's no secret that we have leadership problems in our council, and it isn't helped when such a momentous decision is taken in a matter of 6 or 7 minutes. And in fact, only 2 members of cabinet actually found it necessary to ask any questions of Mr. Leader when he tabled this motion on the evening. So I found all that most unsatisfactory. And I'd also like to say, although it's not pertinent to this discussion, I think it's relevant overall to note that Boston Borough Council has already given away a huge piece of real estate to Boston College in the form of Peter Payne Sports Centre. Now, that was a great facility for the people of Boston. We gave it away, I think, for a penny, peppercorn rent or something, when in fact there was a deal on the table for several £million for a local developer to have the football pitches, and the council or the college could have had the sports hall. So I think we've already given away too much, and I think we need to take stock. I'll leave it there before I ask questions. Thank you
Very much, Councillor Dorian. Excellent. We'll follow the procedure on the sheet, and Councillor Goodale next. So Paul, Councillor Paul Goodale.
Thank you, Chairman. As I said earlier in the declaration of interest, I'm a member of the town board, so I have been aware of this proposal for a short while, although not in this amount of detail that's been developed now. I did raise at the town board that obviously the decision would be a matter for the council and not the town board. Obviously, the town board don't own Jeff Moyle Leisure Pool, and although they are doing a bid, it would be up to the council to decide whether that facility was leased or not. It appears that the cabinet have taken that decision that they would be prepared to lease it to the college, although I appreciate the report does say that it's not, it isn't binding at this present time. But I think for me, the report itself doesn't outline, as you've already said, Chairman, that any replacement would be there. I think it is important that we have a replacement municipal pool, and I have raised that issue at the town board, and there are things probably happening within that I can't actually discuss at the moment, because obviously there are confidentiality things on that. But I have brought that up, and my view is the same as yours, really, that we need to have the replacement to the municipal pool before any development of this Mayflower Centre takes place. It's all right. I have issues as you do, that it may well be demolished and then we end up with no pool. And some bright spark will say, well, there's one down Princess
Princess Anne Centre.
yeah, that shed down outside in Frampton there. So I have problems with that.
I'm not sure I'm hearing you correctly. My apologies.
I'm not sure if that's my computer or somebody else's. I don't know. Oh, it's you.
No, it's not me. No.
No, I don't know. It keeps saying it's not hearing me correctly, so I keep hearing it. Anyway, I think one of the problem for me, and I have raised it again at the town board, is that the two projects need to be linked. We can't have one. We can't have them in isolation. If we're having one, we have to have the other. That's right. If we're having the Mayflower project, we have to have the Health and Wellbeing Centre, which includes the pool, the municipal pool. Yes. And preferably that be built first. Yes. So the other problem I have within the report is it doesn't outline that within the PE21 project. And I think that it will be necessary for this part of the PE21 project, if you like, this Mayflower project and the municipal pool and everything else, to be totally separated from the rest of that project, because a lot of that, as far as I don't believe will come to fruition. But yes. I do. I mean, this is an exciting project. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But I am disappointed that the council members were not fully informed about this project. I appreciate there were some constraints on confidentiality, but I do think if the council were considering leasing this to the college, then members could have been made aware. I don't think that would have been against any confidentiality. I think we could have been made aware of that. They could have been made aware of the issues involved, because that wouldn't, I don't believe, conflict with anything at all. And so I am disappointed in that members basically have found out only because of this report, and it comes as a bit of a shock. I do believe that we owe it, or the council owes it to all members of the council to actually to take them along with this, because if not, the borough council, the whole council needs to have ownership of this, and if not, then I don't see how this bid's gonna fly anyway. So that's my reason for joining the calling when you asked, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Goodale. Excellent. Thank you. I agree with everything you said. It really is a question of order, isn't it? Really, that's my concern. It doesn't take more than 24 hours to knock a building down. It takes a good deal longer to build a replacement. If I may move on from you, Councillor Goodale, is that all right? May I move on from you? Right. Good. Thank you. Councillor Bedford then is the next in line, according to my list.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Peter.
I want to go back a little bit as well to put some flesh on this about the Jet Moulder pool. It was closed the training pool was closed by the BBI in 2009. When we became an administration and I took over as leader in 2011, we received probably the biggest demonstration and a public march to the municipal buildings that Boston has known. And that was organised by Boston Swimming Club and the schools federations. I still have reports on that. I even got a card from a young lady who is now probably even married with children of her own. saying thank you for saving our pool. We moved on, doing a deal with the school federations and Boston Swimming Club, who also worked very hard on this, and they were putting in circa 65k a year to support the Jet Moulder pool, to be bringing it up. We spent money putting solar panels on, we put a new roof on it. We also opened the sensory gardens at the back of the training pool, and that was the start of Boston in Bloom. That was the first project that they undertook. We put new biomass boilers in 2016, which was to save quite a lot of money with a payback period of 8 to 9 years. Only 2 weeks ago, we put out a publicity press thing saying that the Jet Moulder pool has got some new gym equipment in, how well it's been received and how well it's been used. And now, lo and behold, here we are wanting to consider handing over to the Boston College to demolish the pool. This, once again, is like handing over a blank check. I'm sorry, and that is something anybody who's have to work for their own money and not have a golden handshake or be spending public money irresponsibly, what really understands the fact that you cannot sign blank checks, because the report quite clearly states that there is no promise of anything other than an aspiration. Within this town deal document, which we were all given at a briefing in December, there is no mention whatsoever of handing over this pool. And then all of a sudden, overnight, literally, I don't think even papers was produced. I think it was probably a verbal report. I don't know. The fact that this would happen and the cabinet would agree to hand it over. I just cannot believe the irresponsible attitude that cabinet have taken over this. And unless a new pool is actually constructed within PE21, or the fact that the health centre is moved and built around the existing Jet Moulder pool, then that could be another way forward. But that's down to the town team to look at and so on. But the Jet Moulder pool has got quite a lot of car parking. If a new one was built in PE21, where will the cars go? Are we going to go upwards? Because I doubt that will happen with English Heritage allowing the views to Boston Stump to be restricted. So there are many, many questions to ask on this, and they haven't been asked. Hence the fact I called in or agreed to sign in the call in. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you,
Councillor Bedford. Excellent report. Thank you very much indeed. Now, the information I have in front of me says that it is now for us 4 members to ask Councillor Welton and Mr. Leader any questions we may have about the cabinet decision. Well, I think actually quite a lot of questions have been asked, and I think so. Therefore, I think it's right that Mr. Leader has the opportunity to come back on what he can recall of the questions and statements, and then perhaps Councillor Welton as well. Is that okay, Tim, Leader?
Absolutely, Chairman. Yes, I'll get on with it. I'll try and be short. Starting first with the key point you made, Chairman, about the vital importance of ensuring that bricks are being laid for the construction of a new learning centre before we start to demolish that which exists. I think that the reason why we go no further in the recommendation to Cabinet, or rather I went no further in my recommendation to Cabinet than seeking agreement in principle, is that it struck me highly improbable that this council would countenance the loss of the Jeff Moulder Centre unless and until it was satisfied it would be replaced by something of a very high quality. I've been to the Jeff Moulder Centre, I've met the staff. I can't say that I was anything other than impressed by the staff. The Jeff Moulder Centre itself is tired, needs a lot of investment. I can give you more detail on that if you like, but it's certainly not falling down. I have to say I've been to far worse. So, you know, it's an important facility. It cannot just be lost. And my view is that there's no chance at all of persuading members to accept its demolition unless and until I can show you another one will be built and there's the money for it. So if I may, Chairman, I accept the essence of what you had to say when you began this session. But my point is, there has been no decision to dispose of. But here's my conundrum. We've been offered this chance to get our hands on 25 million to regenerate Boston. 25 million is awarded through a process, and that process has a timeline and a pace that we have to adhere to. I was told correctly by Ms. Rustling, who runs the Towns Fund for you, that we had to put a report to senior civil servants in draft by the 23rd of September. We have to get a report signed off by the end of this month. That requires certain work to be got on with by our partners as well as ourselves. And the college had to commission architects to get on with some provisional works to inform our Towns Fund bid. And in order to do that, they at least wanted to know officially that we're prepared to countenance giving up the Jeff Moulder site, albeit they're not daft enough to think it's a blank check or it happens on any terms. The agreement to lease and the lease itself will have to be, in my view, it's a matter for members, of course, will have to be contingent upon certain other things happening, one of which, it is clear from tonight, will include funding for and commitment to, and indeed execution of, the provision of a replacement facility. So, Chairman, that's my response to your observations. I'm in violent agreement, frankly, with most of what you say, if not everything. Moving on then to Councillor Dorian's point, and without repeating the points I've dealt with in relation to your points, I just don't think there has been a huge decision made yet. There will be a huge decision made when and if we agree to demolish the Jeff Moulder, but of course that will be accompanied by a further momentous decision, which is to provide another fantastic facility in the town centre. So there'll be a big decision one day, but it's not happened yet. I don't disagree, frankly, that there could have been a lot more consultation. There should have been and could have been. My simple point is, I come to this as I come to it. I've got a job to do. My job is to make sure we put in a Towns Fund bid on time, on spec. That required me to do certain things. I regret that members weren't better consulted. One thing's for sure, as I think Councillor Rush made clear, we aren't going to get this past council until we have persuaded them that it's a good idea. So if there has been a lack of consultation to date, fair enough. I think, frankly, it's largely down to difficulties caused by COVID-19 since the last cabinet meeting, but that's, people can call it if they want. There's going to have to be a lot more consultation in the future, and we've got to persuade you that the demolition of Jeff Moulder, the construction of the Mayflower Centre, and the construction of the Health and Wellbeing Centre in the town centre is a good idea. And if we can't persuade you, it won't happen. It's simple as that. So we've got a job of work to do, and we'll be getting on with it. And I've set in train the kind of steps that are needed to do that. And if I may, I've been informed that the cost of a replacement facility is likely to be around about 11 to 14 million, rather than the large figures that you were citing, Chairman. I can say that with some confidence because we've employed Alliance Leisure, who are experts in these matters, to give us some advice. They're getting on with that advice, but that's their indication to date. Now, if I'm wrong, I'll be proved wrong, but that's the sort of number we're looking at. Moving on to Councillor Goodale. I agree that the two projects are linked, that they should be viewed as linked, and that the agreement to lease, which would make the site available, recognises that link and the contingency that's therefore involved. So I won't repeat any more of what I've said earlier, but I think I'd just like to underline that point. As for his disappointment that members had not been better informed about what's going on, fair point. I'm not going to argue members were well informed because they plainly weren't. All I can say is that in future they will be, and that whilst I've got conduct of this task, I'm not foolish enough to think I can get this past council, or rather the executive can get this past council, unless we can carry you with force of argument. So point taken, frankly. And then as for Councillor Bedford comments, I think I'd be repeating myself if I were to say any more about what Councillor Bedford said, because in many respects, he reflects the disappointment of other members as to the lack of consultation. All right, fair enough. Good point. I agree. Let's make sure we deal with it better in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Thank you very much indeed. That's a very thorough response. I'm glad you made the point about consultation, because all the way through these events, not just this one, but the Strategic Alliance, the consultation factor has been the critical aspect, and it's really caused a lot of problems, which if consultation had occurred, many of those problems probably would not have occurred. But it is the process of consultation and, in a sense, the obstruction of scrutiny, because, of course, when we pulled the call in, we received an email to say, pull it out because you're in the way. Well, you know, we don't do that here. Scrutiny is a very, very important part of this council. And if I'm chairman, it's jolly well going to stay that way. We are going to scrutinise everything right down to the last detail, you know.
Fair enough, Chair. And my problem was that I had to make sure that Lydia Rustling was able to put together the Towns Fund bid on time, and that did require me to act at a pace. I regret weren't adequately consulted. I'm afraid that we'd have probably needed to get on with that exercise 3 or 4 months before the date I actually did. And we weren't in a position to do that at the time. So I agree, and I apologise to members, and we'll make sure we'll sort it out in future. Otherwise, obviously, I'm going to keep running into this problem.
I'm afraid, and me. I'm sorry about that.
And deservedly so, Chairman. I accept the point.
Right, I'm now going to I'm now going to open up the meeting to other members of the committee. I think it's the best thing. So other members of the committee, if you wish to speak, and then raise your hands. Does anybody else wish to speak? I've got a lot of names in front of me, but yes,
asking questions, Chair.
Pardon?
Are we not asking questions? No.
If you want to ask a question, Councillor Dorian, then I'll give you precedence. All right? Do you want to ask a question?
Well, yes. I just thought we were running on.
You've got the floor, Councillor Dorian. You've got the floor. Off you go.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, Chair. First of all, I'm so delighted you are the Chair, and that you hopefully will continue on when we have the AGM, because I really like your style, and I like the fact that you are intransigent in your views sometimes. I would like to say to Mr. Leader that in actual fact, I thought you presented a really healthy, really strong report to Cabinet. I was really delighted by what was in it. And I don't hold you fully responsible for the lack of consultation. I think that's a political axe to grind, really, with the Deputy Leader. If only, really, in some ways, Mr. Leader, if only you hadn't been with us perhaps a year or 18 months ago, then we perhaps might not be sitting here tonight. We might even have a project that is ready for ticking off by government. So I'd like, with your permission, Chair, I'd like to ask Councillor Welton a couple of questions, if that's all right.
Go ahead. You've got the floor.
So, Councillor Welton, in the report, page 5 of tonight's report, it says in the reason for decision, the project had taken shape very slowly, first been authorised in 2017 and then a master plan produced in early 18. So the master plan I've got gives a date of August 19. So is the one that precedes that, Councillor Welton? Is this a second version?
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but that's my fault. That's a mistake on my part. The actual plan is the later plan that you're referring to, Councillor.
Okay.
There was a date that was wrong in that report. It's that date.
So the date that's on the report, August 19, is correct?
The date on the report is correct. Yes, the one I wrote down is incorrect. The date on the face of the actual AR master plan is the correct one. That's right. Yep, that's it.
Okay, thank you. So all that being said, the report was published then in August 2019. So what did you do with it, Councillor Welton? Once you got your hands on it, what did you do with it then?
Councillor Welton. Jeanette, is Councillor Welton online?
I'm here, Chairman.
Excellent. Welcome, Councillor Welton, to the meeting.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Chairman.
There's a few questions for you to answer. Councillor Doran has...
I think...
Go on. No, go on.
Okay, I think Mr. Leader has answered the first question about the dates, and I thank him for that. Excuse me. Yeah, we got the report 2019, and Michelle Sachs has been working very hard behind the scenes with her team, having meetings with the health providers and the authors of the report and the building owners of the other assets on the site, and that has all accumulated to where we are now. So there's been a lot of work being done behind the scenes. I don't get involved personally because that's operational and we don't involve ourselves in operational, but I have been kept up to date by Mrs. Sachs on all the work that has been done with her and her team behind the scenes to get to a position where we are now, where we are getting ready to put this together. So the background is there's a lot of work and that has been done behind the scenes.
Okay. Thank you for that, Councillor Welton. So I understand the operational side and how that's an officer's role. And of course, the officers take their guidance from you because you're the deputy leader and you're the lead on this project. So you are the strategy, if you like, you're the political will. So all that being said, what did you do with this report in terms of council, in terms of your fellow elected members?
Sorry, I'm not understanding what question you're asking. You know, I've said that the work behind the scenes has happened. Only once the behind the scenes work has been done, and the report in 2019 was a concept. So it's taken a concept and working through all the parts of that concept to put together what can be done and what can't be done, and that has taken a lot of time, a lot of background to look at who owns which bits of land, which bits of land can be used, which bits can't, who wants to do what with which. And we had a meeting, myself, Mr. Leader, and all the partners on site about 7 or 8 weeks ago, I think. And at that time, that's when Mr. Leader took over. And that's when I instructed him that I wanted a update on the full project. I wanted that to come to cabinet. I wanted to know where we were going forward, what was possible, what was not possible. I wanted timelines, budgets, and that's where we are at the moment, where we now have the next step report, which is an interim from Mr. Leader, and the decisions on that is instructed to report back to cabinet with budget costs, steps specified, and various other decisions that we want in order to move this forward. So in any big plan like this, what you have is what appears to be a period of time where nothing progresses, but that's because there's a huge amount of work being done behind the scenes by officers, identifying all the points and trying to put together what is possible and what's not possible. Once that was all done, Mr. Leader's taken over. He has now grasped it very firmly, and we are conversing quite frequently on where this is going.
Can I come back, Chair?
Thank you. Yes, do you want to, have you another question?
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Welton. Well, don't go polishing your halo too quickly, because you can't really take the credit for what Mr. Leader's done. Everything that Mr. Leader has suggested, in fact proposed, apart from the swimming pool element, everything that he's proposed in this report on page 6 tonight, in actual fact, was already in the report from August 2019. It was all there. The next steps, if you look on page 69, you'll find recommendations there of how to move forward, the next steps for delivery. They're there in black and white. So my concern is that we've had 14 months of nothing happening, and then 14 months later, a paper is presented to Cabinet replicating the exact recommendations from 14 months ago, and you're sitting there trying to take the credit for absolutely no reason other than you've got a Cabinet position and you gave an instruction. Well, if, like I said earlier, if only Mr. Leader had been with us 14 months ago, we might be much further on. It's an absolute disgrace, in my opinion, that we've done nothing for 14 months. And please, please spare me the COVID-19 excuse, because that's the 2020 equivalent of the dog ate my homework, miss. It's not acceptable. Now, on page 6 of the report tonight, it says that the NHS...
Mr. Chairman, may I respond to the question?
There wasn't a question.
Yes, fine. Yes, one at a time.
Yeah. Well, firstly, Mr. Chairman, I think in the answer that I gave, all credit was given to the officers working behind the scenes, not myself. And I don't have a halo to polish.
I know.
And all the credit for all the work is the officers behind the scenes. I made that very clear, that we don't, as politicians, get involved in the operational. All the work behind the scenes was done by the officers and the team, of which I've explained, and I have not for one moment tried to take any credit for any of this project. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's no problem. Thank you very much.
Wait, my next question.
The point to grasp is, I know the officer from the work. Sorry?
Can we go for one question at a time? You know, so you've got a question, get them to answer it, and then we come back to another question.
Okay.
If you have 3 or 4 questions, we lose track.
Okay, so I know the officers do the work behind the scene. I know that, but what I'm saying is that we've had 14 months of nothing, and the same recommendations have been brought back. That's my problem. Now, my question now is on with reference to page 6. The penultimate paragraph of page 6 says the NHS, and the last sentence of that paragraph, the NHS and the council had drafted a clear specification of how it would look, it being the new swimming pool or the new Centre for Healthy Living that would incorporate the new swimming pool. So where is that plan? Where is that specification? And why is it not attached to this report? That's to Councillor Welton. Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, if I may pass that
Please
question to Mr. Leader, if that's possible.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Welton. Tim Leader, can you answer that question?
Yes, of course I can, Chairman. Right. When I had my first meeting with representatives from the NHS, I asked precisely, what does this new thing look like, this healthy living centre? The answer was, well, it's work in progress. I said, fine, that's okay. Well, then perhaps we could write down what it is going to look like, where the money's coming from, how big it is, what it's going to do, that sort of thing. To which the answer was yes, absolutely. In addition to that, I said, I'm also going to want to know what the health centre, I beg your pardon, the leisure centre element is going to look like, how big it's going to be, what it's going to contain, so on and so forth. Now, what then happened was that the NHS project managers and Alliance Leisure got together to agree a document which specifies in broad terms the built envelope and the contents of that built envelope, and that is to be used by the designers to get on and draw what it is we're going to want to see. Now, Councillor Welton's not been provided with that because at the present time, quite frankly, I'm not satisfied it's fit for publication. But if Councillor Dorian and other members would like to see where we are in terms of developing up this proposal as something with real concrete substance, if you like, well, let me get hold of those documents and provide them to you.
Councillor Dorian?
Yeah, yes, please do. Although I must challenge you, Mr. Leader, then on the vocabulary used in your report to say that the NHS Council have drafted a clear specification of how it would look, and now you're saying that they haven't.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is they have drafted the specification. They've had to, because in order to cost it properly, they've had to describe exactly what it is, how big it is, what it will contain, and so on and so forth. So they have done it. But what I'm saying is, if you said to me, is it finished? Is it the sort of thing that, quite frankly, Mr. Leader, you're going to say, yep, we're going to deliver that? It might be, Councillor Dorian, but frankly, I'm not satisfied with certainty that it would be. I think it's still to be iterated. So if you said to me, have I got a clear idea of what we're dealing with? Yes. Will it provide me with an accurate costing? Yes. Is it the finished product? No.
Okay, thank you for that. One last question for Councillor Welton, Mr. Chair, if that's all right. So a number of members have spoken at length about all the available information, the available reports, and none of us have been able to find any reference whatsoever to the demolition of the swimming pool. In fact, every map that I've looked at, and in the master plan, in the feasibility study, there are copious amounts of maps. Every time you turn a page, there's another map giving a footprint of the site, the 10-acre site of West Street that we were all led to believe was the area of the project. And then at the cabinet meeting, Councillor Welton, it was described that the demolition of the swimming pool in order to facilitate the building of the Mayflower Centre was going to become the gateway. And that's the actual word used. It was going to become the gateway of the PE21 project. So I would like to know from you, Councillor Welton, how it went from appearing in no document whatsoever and nobody discussing it whatsoever with any elected member, how it went from being invisible to being the gateway and absolutely necessary for PE21. Could you talk me through that process, please?
Councillor Welton, can you do that? Councillor Welton, can you do that?
Yes, I can, Chairman.
Right.
Well, to be honest, you are looking under stones for things that don't exist, to be honest. You know, we have to put this into context. For 14 months, we suffered with lack of resources, lack of officers. The strategic alliance over the last 3 months has given us a huge amount of resources and people working on this. So the original concept of P21, and that's what it was, a concept, an idea, a concept. When the architects, AR Urbanism, were brought in to look at that site, they were given quite a bland set of instructions. Basically, what we wanted was a concept of what could or possibly be done to use that site. So that's what they came up with, a concept. Now, once you have a concept, you then start working on it. Since speaking to Mr. Leader when he took over the site, that is when the Mayflower project and everything else came in, because it's the discussions that have happened to make this happen. So like you've said, for 14 months, very little happened. Behind the scenes, a lot of things happened, but because of resources, not as much as we liked. Now we have the resources because of the alliance, we're moving on at pace. And that is a phrase that Mr. Leader uses quite a lot. moving on at pace. And I've had many conversations with him where he has said, we need to move on, we need to make things right, we need to move things at pace, and we need to do them properly. And that's what he's doing. So there's no great magical, it wasn't there, then it was there. These things evolve from a concept through discussions, through negotiation and all the rest of it, and turning a concept into something that is real. And Mr. Leader did say at the beginning that one of his tasks on this was to look at what is possible, what isn't possible, what's affordable, what's not affordable, what can be turned from concept into reality. And as you go through that process, what seems in the concept plan or the original draft, as things move through and evolve, and as conversations happen, and as partners come on board, things will evolve and change. And this will evolve and change. And that is what's happening.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank
I'll
you,
leave
Chairman.
it just to say what a way to run a council. I've got other questions, but I'll defer to my colleagues, and perhaps I'll get an opportunity if they are not answered by.
You're certainly got opportunity, Councillor Dorian. I won't hold you back. All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Dorian. I suppose the only comment I would make is consultation with members is probably the most key function of the administration. It needs to talk to all the councillors all the time about what's going on, rather than keeping issues, should we say, on the shelf until there's appropriate time. We need to keep people informed, and that's not really happening. Now, can I ask now to I will now open up the meeting to all other members of the committee to ask questions, and does any member wish to ask? I've got one hand in front of me. That's Councillor Anton Danny, actually. Jeanette, has anybody else shown any interest in talking?
No, not at this stage, Chairman.
Oh, I've got two now. Excellent. That's wonderful. Right. Well, could we go to Councillor Anton Danny? Is that possible?
I am here, Mr. Chairman. I can start if you would like me to start.
Well, you have the floor, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Woodliff, Mr. Chairman. It's just I have a few questions, and then I want to probably talk a little bit about the project in my own perception. My first question is either I think Tim can answer it or Councillor Walton. How much money did we spend up to now on consultation? That's my first question, if you'd like to answer it or write it down. The second question, do you think PE21 is the right project for Boston? I know it took 14 months to study this project. And one of my remarks actually on the bus station for the PE21 is to be moved to Stanyland parking space, which is, I think, the layout of the road around it and the traffic and the narrowness of the streets will not be, I think, adequate to have a bus station there. Absolutely. That's my three questions. And if I can come back, Mr. Chairman, I will be grateful.
Thank you very much, Councillor Danny. And I do agree with you about that last point about siting a bus station in the back of that, in narrow roads with the school at the bottom. But anyway, Councillor Welton, I think is it Councillor Welton you want to ask questions to? Councillor Danny?
I'll answer that.
Whoever, I mean, Councillor Welton is more than welcome, or team.
Right, over to you, Councillor Welton.
Like I said, originally 2019 was a concept. I totally agree with Councillor Danny, and my opinion is that a traffic interchange is the best way. We've got a bus station, we've got a train station, we've got a town centre all in the same place. I don't see myself personally that moving the bus station to the other side of the council building is good for us. But I am just one person, and that we can't. I can look at something like that. I can pick some good bits and bad bits that I think are fantastic, things that I personally think might not work. I'm not an urban architect. I'm not an expert in these matters, but I totally agree that I think that moving the bus station there isn't the best idea. But like I said, these things evolve. We'll consult, we'll talk. There was a massive consultation process last year with the public. And, you know, that was one of the things that came into the consultation. So as this project moves forward, all them views will be taken on board.
All right, thank you, Councillor Wilton.
Thank you.
I wonder if I want to add something there, Chair.
Yes.
In relation to the 3 questions, how much spent on consultation? I don't know, truthfully. I'll find out and provide a written answer. Whether it's the right project or not is not a matter for me. All I can say is this: I am planning on alternative bases. That is, that first of all, that we get funding for the Mayflower and for the Wellbeing Centre. That's basis 1. But I have to also consider the possibility that we may not be successful getting funding for both projects. They're being plainly linked. And so what I'm also asking those who are engaged in this project to do is look at alternatives in the event that we don't get the Towns Fund funding for the Mayflower and all the leisure centre, stroke health wellbeing centre. So whether it's the right project, as Councillor Welton will say, we'll have to wait and see. It will iterate. All I'm going to say is this, that I have been told to make sure, if I value my job, I deliver regeneration in PE21. And the one thing I promise you is that I will do that, but I will do that by consulting members. And what I would like to suggest, Chairman, is this, that I go away from this meeting tonight. I think very hard about how we're going to consult on PE21 here on in. I let the committee know how we're going to do it in consultation with colleagues on Cabinet, and we come back and we tell you and we stick to it. So we will, if that would help the committee. And finally, as for the bus station, the coach station, funnily enough, I met the CEO of Bry Lane today. They expressed some concerns about the proposals for the bus and coach station. They have several other ideas that they think will work better. They are working them up for me. We're going to meet again in about 2 or 3 weeks' time. And then when I've got that, again, those sorts of things will surface as this project evolves, and members will be consulted and we'll work together with operators to come up with something which is sensible that will work. So I take all those points on board, very helpful actually.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Thank you. Thank you, Team Leader. Jeanette, I think you're waving your hand.
Mr. Chairman, I said if I can come back, I just got the answers on the 3 questions. And if I may come back, just some few notes, which is I just want probably clarification from Councillor Walton or Mr. Team Leader. Just to exercise my right as a councillor and my opinion. If we go to from our little report we got at page 10, it says the proposals included the closure and demolition of the Jeff Mulder Leisure Centre. For me, we cannot demolish or close unless we have another facility for the residents of Boston. That has to be a fundamental thing, okay? Because I don't know if we will be able to deliver after the demolition or not, and that's a question mark. If I go to page 11 and I go to paragraph 3, and it states private ownership to deliver a range of commercial uses, including market housing, shops, bars, restaurants, and hotels and offices. It sounds very nice, and it gives us that feel that we're gonna probably be competing with other big cities, you know, is having shops and bars and restaurants and, you know, looking for that kind of atmosphere. But at the moment, our reality is a lot of shops are closing in the town center. So we're gonna move somewhere else where we're gonna create shops and bars. We have a beautiful town center, and why not focus on that one? And that will be probably much easier to develop. It will cost probably less. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. It may cost less, but it is, I think, more in reality, it's probably more achievable than building a new one and then having empty shops, because we have to look who's going to run the shops and how much rate and the money. At the moment, we are passing through a very, very difficult times, and things are looking very bleak. That's from point of view of a businessman. It doesn't look good. That's one of the things which is I want to touch on. Then on, I think, paragraph 6, it says none of the work recommended by AR urbanism has been commissioned So, you know, and then I think on 6 lines down the line, no feasibility studies or development briefs have been commissioned. So there's a lot of uncertainty in my opinion. I found in the report. Then we go to page 12, paragraph 7. Moreover, as of the date of this report, no proposals have been developed for the integrated health and leisure facility. And then paragraph 8, the bottom line is this: as matters stand, PE21 remains an attractive, exciting concept of undoubted merit, but whether it is deliverable as it is presently configured at pace or at all remains to be proven. So, I mean, the project and the idea to think about it, yes, it is exciting. We would love to have something in Boston like that, but now we are squeezed with time because the project had to go, I think, by 20 of October 2020. So it has to be proposed. And it just, I have that kind of, I mean, if, you know, that kind of doubt that the project is really the fit one for Boston or not, because we have a demolition of Jeff Mulder, and then we have the uncertainty and consultation. I do appreciate what Mr. Team Leader is doing. He's pushing forward, and probably I will appreciate Councillor Walton and what he said and his answers to Councillor Dorian. But as I said, as a member of this town or resident of this town, as a person who owns a small business in town, you see a lot and you do hear a lot from the public as well. A PE21, yes, is great, but is it a concept will fit the bill for Boston? Or could we probably had a better concept done if we had a proper consultation first, probably with the councillors of Boston, especially the ones from BTAC, the ones who lives in town, and you know the in and out of what's going on in town. And that's just an opinion of myself regarding the project. I really look forward, and I will wish a good luck for the project to go ahead, because it will be an asset to Boston. But could we have done better? Could we probably found a better concept, which could be easy achievable, probably, and cost probably less money or more money? The money is not the issue, but something which can be. Boston is a great town, is very historic, and we have a lot of space around Boston where we can expand. We could have looked at a shopping mall probably in Boston, because there is none probably from Skegness to Louth to Horncastle. So there is things. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to talk.
Chairman, may I just
Yes.
make one observation, which is this, that there has been a very extensive consultation exercise on the draft master plan, which I'm sure Councillor Danny took part in, which is to be found on the council's website if one seeks to see what was done. Significant participation by the public and partners and councillors. So I think that the key point that Councillor Danny makes is that having been done, we need to make sure that we continue to do this in the future. And to give him some reassurance, we've hired people called Banks Long, who are able to advise us on the market for different kinds and quantums and distributions of land uses. And we will make sure that when we come forward with firm proposals, both for the purposes of the Towns Fund and as a fallback in case the Towns Fund bid is unsuccessful, what we present stacks up. There'll be proper feasibility and viability studies for particular development parcels aligned with an acquisition plan, so that what is proposed will be deliverable. Because plans are lovely things to look at, but if they're not deliverable, they're just a waste of public money.
Thank you very much indeed. And I fully support what Councillor Danny has said. I really do think that we need to be very clear about what we do. Councillor Welton, would you want to come back on that?
Chairman.
Yes, I agree. Councillor Danny's made some very, very valid points, and that was my brief to Mr. Leader. Was, you know, these concepts were drawn up pre-COVID. the business has changed, everything has changed, the town's changed, shopping's changed. There's been a huge amount of changes in the last 12 months.
Yes.
And one of the briefs to him was, look at this, see what's possible, see what's not, see what can be funded, see what can't. Evolve the project to make it in something that is either workable or not. And that's what he will be doing, and that's what we expect at next cabinet. He'll bring in an update report on them kind of things. It'd be amiss of me if I wasn't to mention consultation, Chairman. The consultation on this, this is a big report that's going to go to cabinet this month, I believe. Sorry, council this month, isn't it? October. But the way the consultation works on other things now is I was at a meeting 10 days ago regarding the Port of Boston. That was a briefing, a member briefing to cabinet last week. And I instructed Mrs. Sachs to do a full member briefing at the earliest opportunity. And I've also said to her that any development, anything within my portfolio that is of this scale, I want a member briefing for cabinet, and I want a member briefing for all members at earliest opportunity. Because I believe that if we are doing stuff that we are proud of, then we should be sharing that with every single member of the council. And it's not always possible to organise all member briefing immediately. The one for next Monday for the Port of Boston was, I wanted it last Monday, but because there were other things booked and other things, it couldn't be done. Diaries weren't available until next Monday. So that shows an intent going forward from the cabinet to ensure that there are all full member briefings on things that are important to us as a town, and that's what we're going to do going forward. I hope that everybody tunes in next Monday for that briefing, because it's a really exciting project. Thank you,
Thank you,
Chairman.
Councillor Wilson. I think in politics, consultation is absolutely key. You want to avoid
Totally agree.
arguments or whatever. You keep everybody briefed on everything that's going on. Obviously, there's some things that are confidential. We understand that, but broadly speaking, if everybody's kept in the picture, it makes for a much easier life all round, I'm sure.
Yeah. And on this, excuse me, Chairman. I mean, on this particular issue that we're here for tonight was, there was no decision being made on Jeff Mulder. And my feeling on that was, because it's a council asset, that wouldn't be a cabinet decision. It would be a council decision. And I would expect something of that nature. Take my cabinet hat off and go back to when I was Councillor Skinner's deputy, as scrutiny. I wouldn't have expected cabinet to be making a decision on a major asset in the town without it going to full council. And that's where I expect this to be going. I would have expected, and what we actually did was instruct Mr. Leader to go and have a conversation, to go and see what is the art of the possible. Go and have a chat, find out, come back to cabinet with the report. We'll discuss the report. We'll see what's going. And if it's something that's feasible and something that should go forward, full member briefing, and it goes to cabinet. Council, because council at the end of the day is the place where decisions of big major assets like this should be, not cabinet. Cabinet are there to instruct and collate and organise, but on things that are an asset, then that's a full council meeting, a full council decision, and that's where it will be going, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Councillor Welton. That's a very thorough reply. Thank you very much. Jeanette?
Chairman, earlier on, I missed the moment really, but I was just going to urge a caution in that members were starting to speak more generally about the project rather than focus on the decision that's being called in. I'm just concerned in case we run out of time to speak to, well, we won't run out of time, but it might take longer to speak, to allow all members to speak on the the business of the meeting. We do have Councillor Judith Skinner and Councillor Tom Ashton indicating to speak, Chairman.
Was Councillor Rush trying to come in? His hand flashed up and down. So can you check for me whether Councillor Rush wants to speak? Councillor Judith Skinner is next, isn't she? Is that right?
Yes.
So we'll go to Councillor Judith Skinner and then to Councillor Tom Ashton. And then I know there's Councillor Alison Austin. But can you find out, because I know we've got connection problems with Brian, haven't we? Oh, God, my goodness, hands are flying everywhere, aren't they? Right, if we go to Councillor Judith Skinner, if that's all right, can we go to Councillor Judith Skinner, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for
welcome. Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Mr. Tim Leader and Councillor Welton for a lot of their explanations tonight. It's made it very clear for me, and I understand that this is a work in progress. Touching on the last comments about briefings, everyone needs to be attending these briefings, and although I do understand that sometimes people cannot make them, now we've got all this facility of Zoom. Would it be something that we could do that the presentation could be recorded for councillors who can't attend briefings to look at afterwards, so that everybody has a chance and an opportunity to be informed, and that will stop comments like we haven't been told, that we don't know anything about this. And I think that would be really good practice. So I wonder if Mr. Leader would be able to see if that would be a possibility.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Simple answer, yeah.
Tim Leader, can you come in, please? Oh,
sounds like a good idea, Chairman. Let me explore it.
Yes, I think it's a good idea.
That would be wonderful. I'm just trying to make sure that everybody gets a chance to, even though obviously if they're viewing it, they can't participate if it's afterwards, but they could send in questions afterwards, which could be circulated, you know, so that other members know what their thinking is. So that would help us be all on the same page.
So if I could pick that up with Ms. Collier tomorrow or early next week, we'll
yes,
and come back to you.
We might as well take full advantage of technology. Now everybody's got on board with it. And I've got another question is, I remember when the facilities of the Jeff Moulder Leisure Pool were looking to be outsourced for somebody else to run it on our behalf, that the Office of Report said that the Jeff Moulder Leisure Pool needed a lot of investment on it, as is now, and that it had got a very short usable life. Could anybody enlighten me on what the state is of the Jeff Moulder Leisure Pool at the moment? Because that would be something to take into consideration as the getting the new leisure facility. You know, what our expenses are like to be on the Jeff Moulder Pool going forward 10-20 years hence, to be
yes, well, I mean, what I can say is this, that Mr. Fisher, who's in attendance tonight, I think, has got hold of a report from an organisation called Kia, who've given us an estimate as to what it would cost to put the centre in good repair and then to keep it in good repair. We've had a look at that and we don't agree with it, actually. We think it's too low. And our best estimate is that to put the centre in good repair is going to have a one-off cost of around about £750,000 to £800,000, and then there'll be an annual repair and maintenance requirement of about £75,000. There's some additional costs we might add to that, but I think I've given you a flavour there of what we think it's going to cost to keep this leisure centre in good order. I mean, the sorts of things we would want to do is provide a family changing village, because the changing facilities are a little bit old-fashioned and then they're not the sort of things that families expect nowadays. We think the gym and the studio are a bit small. We don't think there's enough toilet provision in the gym class areas, too many receptions. Having said that, it's not a bad facility. And those numbers aren't small numbers, but they're not big numbers when one comes to the question of, well, all right, how do they compare with the provision of a new facility, which goes to the point that members were raising earlier, which is we did a conversation around this. So there is information that we have to hand on the state of the Jeff Mulder Centre and what it would cost to put it into good repair. But I would want Mr. Fisher to put his pen over what we've received and provide members with a more robust estimate, rather than providing you with the document produced by Kieran saying, well, that's it then, because we don't think it is.
Do you think we can ask Mr. Fisher to give a comment? Would that
I'm sure you can. He's here, so I'm sure he'd be delighted to. Wouldn't you?
Andy, are you around?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, indeed. The condition survey we had carried out in 2018, the task in that was to tell us how much it would cost to put in good repair what we have today. As Mr. Leader said, we think that is significantly underestimated in some of the certainly mechanical and electrical elements. So 750 to 800,000 would put what's in situ today in good repair, and good repair, and to keep it in good repair, £75,000 into the medium term. Of course, good repair is not full refurbishment. So full refurbishment to move to a changing village, to look at some of the DDA Disability Act requirements that we would want to affect would be more, I believe, to the £2.5 million. So good repair, 750, 800,000, remodelling and significantly upgrading the centre to £2.5 million. The centre will, of course, always be based on aged fabric and have higher ongoing repair and maintenance costs than any new facility would. And even full-scale refurbishment will only extend its life in the medium term rather than the sort of long term that a new facility would have. But they're the ballpark figures. Clearly, we would need to take significant specialist advice on a full refurbishment package and be able to report back to you.
Andy, what's a medium term? Are we talking 10 years?
I think medium term, I think 7 to 10 years. For the 750 to 800,000 pounds. Full refurbishment would extend that. But of course, what we haven't asked a specialist consultant to do is to put together what a full refurbishment would look like, and then to reassess all of the asset element lifespans from a full refurbishment. But of course, we can do that, commission that if the resources were available, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Skinner, do you want to come back? It's your floor.
Thank you, Chair. I'm presuming if we did lease, and it's only lease the site to Boston College, they would pick up the costs for clearing the site and making good, because obviously with a swimming pool, it's or two swimming pools, it's a blooming great big hole to sort out that they're going to build. Can you confirm that that would be part of it?
Yes, that's my working assumption. We haven't agreed it yet, but when I had my discussion with the college principal, that is what I said.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Skinner. Now, do you want to add anything more, Councillor Skinner?
No, that's it for now. Obviously, if something else comes, I may ask to come back in, and if you will indulge me, I would be grateful.
Of course, yes, of course. Jeanette, who's next on the list, please?
Chairman, it's Councillor Tom Ashton, Councillor Alison Austin, and then Councillor Brian Rush.
Right, we go for Councillor Tom Ashton.
Yes.
Councillor Tom Ashton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think it's genuinely delightful to see the faces peering back at me from my screen. The general sort of the nodding and smiling and genuinely positive reaction. It's good to see that members of this committee can find an awful lot in what is contained in the report of the papers, what went to cabinet, around which it can agree and to unite. And I think we're all obviously committed to taking our town forward, and I think we can see, I can see the excitement and the optimism that are generated around some of these proposals. But what I take out of discussions tonight is a very real sense that we need to do this the right way, and there are assurances that members have felt that they needed. So it's absolutely the right thing for us to be discussing this, to look at this. That's exactly what we do with scrutiny. And on the same page, I'm genuinely delighted to hear the responses from Councillor Welton and from Mr. Leader, which give a very, very sound, clear undertaking. And I hope it certainly reassures me that nothing is going to happen to the swimming provision in our town that we hold dear, which many of the people that we're elected to represent hold dear, which is so important. And as Councillor Bedford, I mean, I remember the discussions. I wasn't a member then, but I was around then in 2011. I remember just how palpable the attachment to this facility is in our town. And I think it's absolutely right that we have that reassurance that has been given tonight that nothing is untoward is going to happen to it, A, without the agreement of council, and B, subject to council agreement, but still nothing is going to happen to it without a replacement on the cards and in place. So I don't think we're probably going to get an awful lot better than that, but it's right that we've had that discussion, and it's right that we've got those assurances minuted and recorded, and for us all to see, because there is a huge amount of good that I can see coming out of this. I mean, the opportunity that seems to be there, if the conversations can be had, if the work can be done, to provide Boston not just with the facility that it's got, but to provide a facility potentially to see us well through or well into the 21st century. And hopefully that's when our grandchildren are on the council, my grandchildren, other people's great-grandchildren are on the council, they can be having the argument in about 2080 as to whether they go for another town fund or whether they repair it or what they do with it. But these are the opportunities that we have with this, and I think they're genuinely marvellous. The one question I would add is that Mr. Leader spoke of there being deadlines that need to be met, reports that need to be submitted in order to secure government backing for the town fund, of which PE21 is a critical part. I mean, my understanding, and I think it might go to some way towards explaining the concerns over the timescales and how long some of this stuff is taken, is that, to my mind, PE21 pre-existed the town fund being launched by the government. So there are two separate things which over the course of the last year have had to be drawn together in order that one might have a hope of funding or helping the other. But there was the mention of deadlines that need to be met. One of which I understand has already passed and been met with the first two items that Cabinet decided. And what I'd like to know, is there a deadline that is dependent upon the conversations taking place that recommendation 3 was going to authorize? And is there anything what is necessary from us if we were to progress this? Is there I think you get what I'm driving at. Is there a deadline that we need to meet, and is there anything that would be in jeopardy by not meeting it?
No, let me just tell you what the deadlines are. We have a Boston Town Fund Board meeting on the 5th of October, and the final one for the Town Investment Plan is on the 16th of October. We've got a Boston member briefing on Monday the 19th of October, with full council on the 26th of October, with the bid being submitted on the 30th of October. Now, because of the decision that was made, at Cabinet, the principal of Boston College was able to get on with instructing her architects. They've kept on working. We've kept on talking. They understand that this committee tonight was going to give us a thorough scrutiny. I suspect that everything that's been said would come as no surprise to them. That they're experienced people. They do understand that we're not going to surrender the Jeff Moulder without there being alternative facility. They sit on the Towns Fund board as well, and they know Boston. So nothing that's been said tonight would surprise them, I don't think, in the sense of knowing that the two projects are linked. And so they've got on with the work. They've taken that risk based upon the information in principle that Cabinet gave. We don't need a final decision on Jeff Moulder at this stage. And in fact, we couldn't take one because we need to know whether we've got money from the Towns Fund to do the Mayflower and then do the Jeff Moulder.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Leader. Tom, any further comments?
Thank you very much. I mean, I'm delighted to hear that. I'm delighted that progress with the broader project, which I know a lot of people have had deep involvement, is progressing, and I'm quite satisfied that the requirement that we have as councillors, the council will have to follow this through, to have its briefings, to come in the fullness of time to any decision, that there is time for that to happen. And the rest of it carries on. I mean, I think that the point I would say is we must never allow perfect to become the enemy of good. And there is so much good here that with the reassurances that I think have been given, we can be reassured that that good is very good indeed. Thank you. If there's anything else, I may indicate with your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, but that's it for now.
Of course, no, you can come back anytime. Okay, if you want to come back, just say. Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Right, Jeanette.
Yes, Chairman.
Now, who comes next?
There's Councillor Alison Austin, Councillor Brian Rush, who isn't a committee member, but it's up to you, Chairman, whether you invite him to speak now or later, and then Councillor Anne Dorian.
Right, what was it? Am I correct in the order? Is it Alison and then Brian? Is that correct? Is it Councillor?
Yes, Chairman, unless you wish to take committee members first. In which case, it would be Councillor Austin, Councillor Dorian, Councillor Rush.
Councillor Austin is next. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, if she's a committee member, so she comes next. Yes.
She is.
Right. Councillor Austin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. I take it the floor is mine for a few minutes, definitely. And I won't take too long over it, I hope.
Up to you.
Now, I have deliberately stood back to some extent because I've come onto this committee very, very late because of a vacancy. So I thought I would let the others go first. And as a result, of course, most of them have stolen my thunder regarding the questions. And what I was going to say, just so you know, what was in my mind was obviously what were the conditions that were that related to that idea of the Cabinet is minded to, but I think we've now had that pointed out, so I'm happy with that one. I was also going to say why in the world have we had a tremendous delay, but I see there was an error in dates, so I accept again that that was has been explained. And my idea that I was going to put forward, Councillor Skinner just beat me to, as I would like briefings to be recorded. Right. Scrutiny obviously is key to all of this. And along with it, though, is of course consultation. I think, you know, we have member briefings quite regularly, and regrettably not people don't necessarily take advantage of them, because I felt I was reasonably well up on PE21 following the briefing and the presentation that we had. And interestingly, what the public picked up on was moving the bus station. And to me, I mean, am I perhaps just alone? But you don't have to have a bus station in the most central place. As long as you have a bus service and a bus stop at a convenient place, or bus stops, then does the bus station have to actually be in that central area? So, you know, that was something that was sort of paramount in my mind. But of course, if we are going to then be developing and having a swimming pool in PE21, then there has got to be some parking involved. And was there, could Tim or somebody just refresh my memory, was car parking available for the swimming pool, or would it be the nearest public car park? That's my first question. Do I pause there and then move on?
Yes, it's probably a good idea. Do you want to ask Tim Leader that question?
Well, or anyone who's Nigel or Andy Fisher, anyone who feels they can answer that one for me.
Yeah, I'll take that. The main plans that we've got are just a concept. So there was parking there, limited. There was lots of things in the concept, but like we've said, there are no concrete lines, or you know, nothing is decided.
No.
You know, like I said earlier, Mr. Leader's been tasked with go away, find out what's possible and what's not possible. So as this evolves, when these things get built and get planned, then obviously there's got to be reasonable provision for each of the schemes that are going to be on that site. So if it's going to be, you know, doctor surgeries, outpatients and a swimming pool, then of course there's got to be some available parking, because people, especially with outpatients, if you turn up and you've come to have something on your foot dealt with, you're not going to be able to walk for a bus, are you? So as these things evolve and as these things get into proper decisions and plans, then you know that's when these things will be ironed out. But at the moment we're just in a basic concept stage where we're still talking to partners about what is possible. And you know, if we don't get the town fund and we don't get the money, and the health service don't get the money and the college don't get the money, then all of it is irrelevant. We'll have to look at something totally different.
Right, if I may go on then, Chairman, please. So I said really most of my questions have been answered. The rest, almost all of it, is now just going to be statements and opinions. Obviously, we've going to require match funding for absolutely anything we do. So I think people saying, well, 25 million won't go very far. 25 million is what I consider, if you will, what's the program? University Challenge, you know, it's your starter for so many points, but after that you've got to earn the rest. And it's sort of priming almost, I see this, that 25 million, as then we've got to get match funding. Have any potential sources been even researched as regarding this health and leisure facility that we might be, or that we're hoping to be able to create?
Councillor Welton, Tim Leader, Andy Fisher.
I'll defer that to Mr. Leader, Chairman.
Righto. Come on, Tim Leader, then. Can you answer the question?
The short answer to your question is we're talking to colleagues in the NHS, and we'll be seeking to establish from them whether we can get match funding from them to assist us with constructing what the Towns Fund will also part fund. So yes, we're looking for match funding from the NHS in relation to their component of the health and wellbeing facility. Of course, if we put a leisure centre there too, people will be looking to us, I suspect, And we will in turn be looking to other people to try and draw in funds to help fund a leisure centre. So they get quite complicated. And if you said to me, well, go on then, precisely where's the money coming from? Who's going to give you precisely what? I don't know yet, actually, to be honest. But there will be match funding sought in relation to the Health and Wellbeing Centre from the NHS in relation to their components.
Right, thank you. So you are confident that this project is going to tick sufficient boxes to be able to get match funding from different sources, hopefully?
Well, if I were to say that I was confident, I'd be overstating my position.
No.
I have heard from those who are experts in the provision of this kind of facility and from colleagues in the NHS, and they've given me confidence that we can put forward a robust proposal that has a good chance of securing the backing of the Secretary of State's, if you like, panel of judges when they come to evaluate our Towns Fund bid. But I can't go any further than that.
No, no. Obviously, really, in some respects, PE21, well, the saviour of PE21 could be the town deal, couldn't it?
It could be, but actually I'm planning on the basis that we get no public subsidy and that we have to regenerate the town centre, I beg your pardon, PE21, by attracting capital from the market for uses that stack up. Uses being obviously housing. I've been around the town centre with a very experienced developer who's confident that housing would be a very strong contender for all of the vacant and underused sites that we will seek to acquire and then consolidate into development parcels. We're also pretty confident that leisure uses would find the location attractive as well. The real challenge, as somebody said earlier, as chairman, is along West Street, because there you've got lots of small businesses. It's a vibrant place, but it's also very down at heel. And what we want to do is regenerate without destroying perfectly good businesses. You know, make it attractive, make it other than threatening at night, whilst not losing the vital and viable elements that are there already. So it's a real challenge, actually. But I don't proceed on the assumption that the Towns Fund has to be successful. If it's not, and I would just turn around and say, oh dearie me, that's it then, I think I deserve to get fired fairly quickly.
Right, well,
Christmas, surely.
I like you're an optimist.
Yes, go on.
May I just go on a little tiny bit more, please, Chairman?
Yes, please go on. Please go on.
Thank you. Interestingly, talking about West Street, if Mr. Leader had been here in sort of 2007, when I joined the council, one of my first thoughts was, well, we could keep the facade of the municipal buildings, make a nice hotel behind it, and get us some purpose-built office space somewhere. But I think I won't pursue that one now, thank you. Right, the other thing that I am obviously concerned about, obviously shops mustn't be the key, must they? I think the way shopping has gone, we certainly don't want any large anchor stores, anything like that. And we were extremely lucky, I think, or sensible not to get involved. And I can't remember what the development was called, that we went to look at one in Wigan. Perhaps someone can help me out there. Who was here then? Peter was here, Andy Fisher was around then. I can't remember what it was, and everyone was saying we must have a Debenhams, and all I can say is thank goodness we didn't.
It was Modus, Councillor Austin, Modus.
Sorry?
Modus was the name of it.
Oh yes, thank you, I remember that now.
Thank you, thank you, Councillor.
Right, and certainly I don't know about shopping malls. No, give me open air shops anytime. But I find this, PE21 is so exciting that I don't want to feel that it as a whole is going to be jeopardized. And we've had it stated very, very clearly that on no account would anyone be allowed to demolish the Jeff Mulder until we've got, almost to the last brick, if you like, or well on with the construction of a replacement facility. But we've just got to have that confidence, and I hope that, as the leader will, really, really hold that. You've not got to falter on that, statement that you wouldn't allow anything to be demolished until the replacement was well on the way. This whole thing has got to be something that's needed. It's not meant to, it's not a vanity project, which I think you might describe the PRSA as, but it is something that the community can relate to. And, at the moment, the Jeff Mulder Centre is something that they can relate to, isn't it? So we've got to keep ourselves now up to speed. You gave us some dates, and I've managed to write 2 of them down. When we've got a briefing about this, when we've got the council meeting, and about submission, what's got to be submitted when. For my future reference, could I have those dates again?
Yes, of course. We've got a Boston Town Fund board meeting on the 5th of October. But the final one for
Sorry, not too fast. The board is on when?
On the 5th of October.
Yeah.
And there's a further final board meeting for the approval of the town investment plan on the 16th. So that's the board.
Yes.
Then we've got a Boston member briefing on October with your full council to approve it, we hope, on the 26th of October, with bid submission on the 30th of October.
Right. So, and what date was the member briefing?
The member briefing is on the 19th, Monday the 19th.
Right. So we've got the 19th. Right. And that permission then, but the fact that you've had to submit, when do you have to submit this proposal?
Well, the full bid, which would include this proposal, goes in on the 30th of October. So, I think the important thing will obviously be this, that when we come to council, we will be saying, look, this is a package of proposals that we think is an attractive package that is fundable, that ticks all the boxes, forgive that phrase, that the Secretary of State requires us to tick if we're going to get Towns Fund money. But we're not going to be saying to you, you are committed to the demolition of the Jeff Mulder Centre under any circumstances. That will have to be the subject of a separate member decision, which will in itself be contingent upon the necessary funding being available to build a new leisure centre. And we would obviously not enter into any contractual relationship with the college that undermine that position. And of course, they don't expect us to. They're wise people.
Mm-hmm. So we have your word that nothing will be knocked down until we're seeing the new one going up.
What do you do? Because I have no authority at all, and nor does any other officer, to cause this building to be knocked down unless and until members tell us they are happy with that.
Yep. And
I've had a pretty clear indication tonight as to the conditions that will have to be met to secure that level of approval.
Right. I think that's...
if I can just add there, Mr. Chairman, that no officer will be given any approval from myself, and I speak on behalf of the Cabinet as well, until a full council decision. The Jeff Mulder Leisure Centre is a decision for the full council, every one of us.
Right.
And that is recorded, that's on YouTube, and it's there forever, Mr. Chairman. So hold me to it.
We will hold you to it.
Thank you.
And as you know, we also know you yourself, Mr. Leader, everyone, both in the borough and East Lindsey, knows how key to all of this is consultation and scrutiny. Thanks. I've made my points.
Thank you very much, Councillor Austin. Thank you very much indeed. I agree with everything you've said. Excellent. Now, Jeanette, I think Councillor Brian Rush is next. Is that not so?
That's right, Chairman.
Yes,
and then Councillor Dorian and then Councillor Peter Watson.
Well, we go for Councillor Brian Rush.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, good. I'm very pleased about that. I do apologise if my speaker's been on. I've been trying constantly to switch it off so that people weren't being disturbed by my movements, if you like. I use the word very carefully.
Go ahead.
So here we go. The first thing I'd like to do is thank you and Mr. Leader and everyone else for allowing me to speak. And I do have some observations. However, when I look back at the conversations I've heard, they seem to be concentrating quite rightly, I suppose, on these projects. And in itself, and I hope Mr. Leader takes this the right way, but I think that the layers of different projects, if that's the right term, is somewhat confusing. We don't know whether we're talking about the town deal or the PE21 or anything other, and the swimming pool, and the whole thing, in my mind, becomes a little confusing. So for that same reason, really, I don't expect that the people of the town, if indeed they are allowed to hear any of this, and I'm sure they are, that they will be any more educated in what is going to happen in the future than we have at the moment. So let me try and concentrate on something here. I'm quite pleased that suddenly Boston may well be getting a shopping centre and all the rest of the things that are being promised in this project. But we've been here before, haven't we? And someone mentioned Modus. And of course, no one ever wants to go back to that place again. However, and I don't suppose we will. I've got more trust in the people that we're dealing with now. I think we'll probably be well settled, if you like. But here's the thing. All of these grand plans are very, very good. And in fact, they need to be applauded. However, Boston suffers from one single thing that destroys the fabric of the town. And that is accessibility. We can put all the lovely shopping centres we like and all the lovely swimming pools we like around this town, but what people have to do is get to them. I am almost embarrassed every time I walk through town and see the glorious St. Botolph's Church sitting there proudly, a pinnacle of pride to this town, and no one gets to it apart from the people that live around it. I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, that we should be exerting our efforts around the old-fashioned idea of having a bypass. And I know that will make people tremble in their boots every time we mention it. But let's be honest. When people in their busy lives want to get from point A to point B quickly, efficiently, the last thing they're going to do is come to a town so gridlocked as Boston is. Now, it isn't always gridlocked. I understand that. But I would say to Mr. Leader, have you considered at all the issues of traffic that this town actually suffers under? And do you sympathise with that? And how would that affect the grand plans that we're putting down? If you can answer that first for me, and then I'll come back again. Thank you very much.
Yes. Well, the one thing that I learned very early on after becoming associated with Boston is the strong desire for a bypass. My preliminary investigation of this project, that is the bypass project, with county officers, has revealed to me that what they think is that the town doesn't need a bypass, because the traffic that is intended to be carried by a bypass under normal circumstances is intended to create capacity within a town by removing that which is passing through from the, if you like, the internal road network. And what I'm told, I don't say it's right or wrong, is that traffic feeds into Boston along the A16 coming from the Sleaford direction. It then heads off towards the Pilgrim, and then once you get beyond the Pilgrim, the flows outwards towards, if you like, the heart of East Lindsey or towards Skegness, is relatively light. Now, I am not going to say that I'm right when I repeat those comments, because I may not be, and you will know far more than me, but that's what I've been told. I've also been shown various proposals of a sketchy nature for river crossings, the development of large tracts of land that might, in the fullness of time, provide some relief to the congestion that you suffer during, I don't know, the school run hours is how I'm going to describe it, because that's when it seems worse to me. But again, you're local, you know better than me. So I'm not, can I say, I'm open-minded about the whole bypass issue. I think I should be. I think I've got to learn more about it. If you said to me, how does it affect the proposals for PE21? I don't think it does, actually, because a lot of PE21's underpinnings is about making the most of the potential for people to get to that part of town by public transport, on foot and by bike. In other words, there may be a lot of traffic flowing by under congested conditions, but what we want to do within PE21 is say, well, look, this is a site which has the potential to be highly accessible by means other than car. And so if PE21 does anything, it ought to be to reduce reliance on the car, increase the use of the foot and the pedal and public transport, and in that sense at least, tend to alleviate the obvious problems you suffer from at rush hour. Now, I'm sorry about that long-winded answer, Councillor. I want to confess, though, that I do not know half as much as I need to know about the bypass argument.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. I'm highly enamored by. Sorry, I'm very impressed by your notice. The notice you have actually paid to the way this town operates and the traffic issues that we have. So moving on from that, and I'm a supporter of any development in this town. It's been starved of development for a long time, or at least properly planned development. We have a hodgepodge of different little industrial estates here, there, and everywhere, which doesn't do the town any good. And I was glad that you did mention, I think it was you mentioned, the into-town bus service. And in fact, whilst I understand that it's a service that lots and lots of people use and are very enthusiastic about, it's another one of those projects, in my opinion, that was badly thought through. You will hear people talk, Mr. Leader, about the centre of town, and we talk about Straight Bargate, and we talk about all those names for roads. But in fact, what people call the Straight Bargate element is the precinct. And so people from outside of this town come along imagining that our precinct is much like anyone else's, where you can safely walk around and not be run over by a bus or a train or whatever else there is around. So I'm pleased to hear that you're having conversations with the operators of that, and any improvement that you might deliver or find that they will offer, I would wholeheartedly applaud. But you can see that when I mention things like this, and the few things that I have mentioned, we have massive problems in the town of our own making, of our past councillors making, probably, past officers possibly as well. But the thing is, all the moaning that we're doing and the crying out for help is exactly that. And I'm hoping that what you will deliver will be worthwhile. However, I'm just worried that what we've got is 3 layers of 3 different aspirational projects going on at the same time. And I can only say that is going to lead to confusion. It's confusing me at times, and although I'm not on cabinet, but or in any position of power, but I have to be honest and say, I really do wish we would simplify things and stop making them so damn complicated. Mr. Leader, I wish you luck, and I do hope that we will resolve the issues that Boston has got, and I do hope that it will become a thriving, explosive town again, as it was in the past. However, I have to say that if I've got any reservations at all about this, I'm afraid we're going to have to get on side with Lincolnshire County Council and make them take notice of Boston. Thank you very much.
If I may, Councillor, having spoken to Bry Lane today, they're very anxious to talk to both East Lindsey and yourselves about what they think they can do with the help of both of our councils to help persuade Lincolnshire County Council to facilitate them in delivering a much better bus service to the local communities. And so what I can say to you is I think very senior people from Bry Lane will want to come along and talk to you soon about their ideas and proposals. And finally, I agree with you that this is all jolly complicated. We've got a Towns Fund proposal, which in some respects might be seen as distorting a clearer and longer term proposal for PE21 that was already in existence. And what I want to see happen is the Towns Fund go in. I want it to be a brilliant bid, and with Lydia Rustley running it, it will be. Let's get that in, get it done, get it out the way, see where we've got to, see what we get funding for, and then whatever the outcome, let's just get PE21 sorted out. And I won't be waiting for PE21 to be sorted out by the Towns Fund adjudicators. I'll be putting in place proposals that, if you like, fill in around the edges of the big public projects, because I want to see some change and see it quick. So I just want to endorse what you say, Councillor. I agree with you. And
well, thank you for that. That's a comforting statement that you've made. I would just like to add one thing about the vote for the bypass issue. Now, we know that it's been tainted from the past, but there is another casualty in all of this. And Boston is actually the blockage, if you like. Because of its road structure, we also affect our very near and good friends, Skegness. Now, Skegness is a prime local seaside resort, and I have to be honest and say that we disrupt the flow of traffic to Skegness simply because of our own of designs of our own making. I rest my case.
Fine. Okay. Thank you, Brian. If I can move on, Jeanette, I think Councillor Peter Watson hasn't spoken yet, has he? I want to come back finally to Councillor Andorian, but if we can go to Councillor Peter Watson first, if that's... have you finished, Brian? Is it okay?
I have. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
That's fine. Okay.
I can't switch my microphone off, so I do apologise.
No, it's fine. Fine. I just want to be sure that everybody can say exactly what they want to say without any restriction. Now, Councillor Peter Watson's next, I think. Is that correct, Jeanette?
Yes, Chairman.
Right. Then we'll go to Councillor Peter Watson next. Peter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity of allowing me to speak at this committee. And thank you to Mr. Leader for the presentation. It's very good. Now, I actually have been thinking about what I seem to feel is slightly odd here is on page 15 with the section which talks about legal implications, etc., and climate change implications. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we are demolishing buildings and replacing them with a similar type of building, so a pool complex, a leisure complex is torn down and another one is built, I do to some degree on that basis scratch my head and say, well, why? And I also appreciate that there has been some discussion about figures for an upgrade of 2.5 million and what needs to be spent on the Jeff Moulder Centre of some £750,000. So really, it's just more of an observation. And my interest is because I have worked on the climate change working group that we had some months back. And of course, I think we also need to remind ourselves that we have, as a council, declared a climate emergency. So I was just wondering if there is any input or anything that could be said about what I've just said. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'll
yes.
deal with that, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind.
No, that's fine.
Yes.
Councillor Wilson, go
I mean,
ahead.
it's very clear, Councillor Watson, that the decisions in the report don't actually start any building or any movement. The three decisions were about moving discussions forward and reports to come back to cabinet. So obviously the climate change implications, once we get to a decision making process of you know, boots on the ground as such, then that would be huge. But the back page of this report is specific to this report, so there aren't no climate change implications on this actual report apart from print in the papers. But you know, once we get forward and we start getting these plans into place, and you know, things start to move, as Mr. Leader has promised us, things will happen, and at pace, as he keeps telling me. I'm sure that there will be lots of impact assessments and all the other things that go through the planning process and everything else. So yeah, you're right to question that, but there is no implications on the, apart from the 15 or 22 pieces of paper that I've got in front of me.
Thank you, Councillor Welton.
If
Peter?
I may, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Councillor Welton. That's very good. I think, obviously, I'm coming in at the back end of the discussion so far. I am so pleased to see that there is now acknowledgement of a lack of consultation that has happened in the past with this, and it's refreshing to hear Mr. Leader say that yes, from now on there will be more consultation. And yes, so obviously a lot of what has been said has already been covered. So thank you very much.
Well, if there's anything else you want to ask, Peter, you know, it's completely up to you. There's no restriction here.
I'm very happy with what's been discussed, and yes, it's an exciting time for Boston.
Yep, we can be here till midnight, you know.
I'd rather not be here till midnight, if that's all right.
All right, Jeanette, I want to go to Andorian, Councillor Andorian. Is that feasible? Yes?
That's right, Chairman. Yes, thank you.
Right, Anne?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, okay, so I've listened to all the debate, really interesting. Just a couple of observations to make and then a question. Really, when we last met, when we met on the 10th of August at our extraordinary full council meeting to have a vote of no confidence in the leader, at that meeting, Councillor Welton did this huge mea culpa, accepted the blame for just about everything that had ever gone on. In fact, one Conservative mentioned to me he was surprised he didn't take responsibility for starting World War II. But that aside, he acknowledged the lack of consultation on the strategic alliance and promised that matters would change. He promised that that would never happen again. Yet a mere 4 weeks later, on the 11th of September, he does exactly the same, takes a paper to cabinet in which there'd be no consultation with elected members. That's my observation. The second point I'd like to make is that the number of higher education students at Boston College currently, according to their own website, is 200 higher ed students out of 8,000, which suggests to me, and I would put my hands up to being wrong because it's just a guess, that it's only 200 students that are paying any fees to Boston College. And that means then, Mr. Chairman, that all their funding comes from government. And that being said, it means that the decision that Cabinet made did have a financial implication, perhaps not directly to Boston Borough Council, But it certainly had a direct implication to the public purse, because Mr. Leader made clear that if the nod was given, that Boston College were then going to spend tens of thousands of pounds, and I quote him there, on architects' fees and working up drawings for the new Mayflower building. My third observation, and then I'll ask the question, is that I would have liked to have heard Mr. Leader accept or admit rather that his claim of the Mayflower building being the gateway to the PE21 project was mere hyperbole. I would have liked that.
I'll agree with that. It was an inappropriate and rather too flowery expression. It's certainly an important component, but yes, to describe it in that way was over the top. You're right.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Leader. I respect you more for admitting that, because you kind of lost me at hello with that one. It just didn't chime with the reality of the layout of the town. Now, so here's my question to Councillor Welton, and I thought someone else might ask it, Mr. Chairman, and I'm surprised that no one did. And really, the question is this: why? Why, Councillor Welton? Why are we giving away a huge chunk of real estate when we are cash strapped? As a council, we are watching the pennies because we don't have any pounds. So why have we got this massive footprint of land that we are just going to give away to a college that's rated as the top 10 in the country, I'm told, or within the top 10, instead of perhaps that we give ourselves planning permission for a large development of houses that are badly needed, by the way, in this town, and sell it to a developer. Now, it was only in 2011, 2012 that we gave away the Peter Payne Sports Centre, and when we walked away from a several £1 million land deal, I just couldn't believe it, but we did. We gave it away lock, stock and barrel for a peppercorn rent, and I am very passionate that we, excuse me, don't do that again. I'm very passionate that we wring every last penny out of all of the real estate that we have, the assets that the town has, because they belong to the people of Boston. And right now, after 12 years of austerity, the cupboard is bare, and really, we shouldn't be giving this real estate away. So please, Councillor Welton, explain why you would like to give it away for nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the answer is we've made no decision to give anything away at this stage. And the calling decision this evening was on number 3, that instructs Mr. Leader to go away and enter into conversation, to communicate. The decision on how, where, what and when will be a full council decision, and I'm sure that that'll be something that Councillor Dorian can bring at that one. But as this stage at the moment, what we're looking at is discussions, and I'll leave it at that, Chairman.
I mean, there is one other point I ought to make, Chairman, because it's a very fair question, actually. Why would you do it? On the face of it, it's an interesting proposition. And I think there are two, if you like, officer answers. And they would be these. The first is, as one might have it, giving away the sites, you actually have the opportunity to lever in £25 million worth of investment from central government. Now, whether we're successful or not remains to be seen, but if we can lever it in, I think it starts to make more sense, though I respect the point you make. We have to make sure that when one does a sort of double entry bookkeeping around this, it all adds up. But in principle, it's not quite giving it away, even on worst case, because what we're doing is we're levering investment to provide A, the Mayflower, and B, a good chunk of the Healthy Living Centre, which will then also be match funded by others. So it's a complex equation, but we're going to have to set it out for you. And if you want to challenge us at that point, that would be very fair. I think the second observation I'd make is Boston is plagued, as you've said, I think, or certainly intimated, by low skills, low attainment and low provision of top quality education. And the college and its position within the Towns Fund bid, that is the college's proposal for the Mayflower Centre, and its position within the Towns Fund bid, if you like, at the pinnacle of the Towns Fund bid, is intended to address that. And then the linkage with the Health and Wellbeing Centre is that we also are unfortunately somewhat noteworthy for poor levels of health and facilities for doing something about it. Now, I really like the Jeff Mulder. I've got to say, I heard bad things about it. I went there, I met the brilliant staff, I looked around it, massively impressed actually. So again, we're going to have to persuade you that when one does the double entry bookkeeping, that emphasis on skills, which is why would you knock the Jeff Mulder down? Well, because it's the only place you can put the Mayflower, which makes any sense, we think anyway. And then, okay, if you're going to do that, why would you do it? Well, because you're providing something of equal quality somewhere else that will help to repurpose the town centre. But the trouble we've got in my saying all of this is you might say, well, that's all very interesting, Mr. Leader. Would have been nice if you told me that earlier. And I would have to take that one on the chin and say, fair point. So there's a narrative that we need to have going forward, which needs to be revealed and not dropped on you at the last moment. Now, you know, that's my fault, let's face it. I'm supposed to be skilled at this sort of thing. And the fact that I had dropped it on your head at the last moment might, one has to concede, reveal a certain lack of skill, which I'd better sort out. So I'll take the blame for that. Fair point made, and I shall be addressing your points, I hope, in the future. If I don't, you'll pull me up on it.
Can I come in there, Mr. Leader, and say actually it's a political thing, really? It's the politicians who run the Borough Council who should be organising that. It's not really for you to take the chin on the chin. It's really the leadership of the council who should be arranging for you to present information to us. So it is a political thing, in my opinion. The decisions need to be taken by the leadership of the council to inform members, and then you can then play your part in that. But I don't believe it's right to say that it's your fault. It's not actually. The fault lies with the leadership of the council in ensuring that the process runs correctly. Councillor Dorian, how do you view that?
Yes, you took the words almost right out of my mouth. Thank you for that, Chairman. And I wholeheartedly agree with everything you just said there. And Mr. Leader, I'm never going to debate you in public. That's not my role and it's not your role. I'll debate other councillors all day long till the cows come home, and I would love every minute. However, you don't need to apologise for any errors that you perceive. They're not perceived on my part at all. I haven't been convinced by the political case tonight, I'm sad to say. I'm really disappointed that once again we weren't consulted. And so, Mr. Chairman, at this point, I'd like to move a recommendation that this committee refers the matter to full council for debate. And I'm a seconder.
Right. We have a, thank you, Councillor Dorian. Do we have a seconder, please? Jeanette, do we have a seconder?
I will second that.
Thank
Chairman.
you, Councillor Bell. Thank you.
Chairman, can I, Councillor Tom Ashton was indicating before the proposal
Of course.
as well.
Tom, come in, please, Tom.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think it's been a terrifically interesting debate and discussion among members tonight. And as I set out in the comment that I made to the committee a little while ago, we mustn't let perfect become the enemy of good. And I think there is a huge amount of consensus that there is a great deal of good in what we are proposing to do here with the town steel, with PE21, with the possibility that we have of securing potentially a new leisure facility for our town and for generations to come. And I come back to that point that the only part of the decision which was taken, of the decisions that were taken by Cabinet that have been called in to this committee is whether Mr. Leader, in principle, may have conversations with Boston College in order to allow them to begin work on their Mayflower Centre and those bits of the proposals. And I think it's absolutely right that we've given it the airing, the scrutiny, the attention, the care that members of the committee have done tonight. And we have, I think, extracted two very real and valuable reassurances. Indeed, the reassurances which, Mr. Chairman, when you were setting out your reason for calling this in the first place, was the assurance that no final decision will be taken on any of these matters until it has been through the proper scrutiny. And my understanding is that it will go on current course to a member briefing so that all members of the council, including those that haven't had the privilege of listening to the discussion tonight, are able to appraise themselves of all of the facts. It will come before, I'm assuming, this committee, but I stand corrected on that point if I'm wrong, but it will then go to full council, and full council will take those substantive decisions. We have that reassurance from both Councillor Welton on the political side and Mr. Leader as the officer clarifying those points. And the other substantive concern, which was set out in the reasons for calling this in, was an assurance that we wouldn't be witnessing the decommissioning of Jess Moulder Leisure Centre until its replacement, if there is to be one, is effectively ready to open. Because the people of our town would not forgive us if we closed the door on Jeff Moulder and, for example, it took another 6 months before the doors opened on the new one. That is not something that we could accept as members. That's not something that would be politically acceptable. It's certainly not something that the people of our town and our borough would be prepared to accept. So back to my point, it's absolutely right that that formed the core of the concerns that has led to the discussions we've had. But fundamentally, we have the reassurances on that point. Now, personally, I don't see what more there is to be extracted out of this. I don't see what further reassurance we can expect, having been reassured on the 2 points that were raised at the beginning of this evening. And it's for that reason that I would move, not that we refer this to full council for full debate, because we've already got it in absolute assurance that this will be on the agenda for debate at the next full council as part of its process before we are allowed to submit, before the bid is submitted. So that's going to happen in any case. And what I would prefer to move, and what I will move with your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, is that
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, we can't have a second recommendation. There's one on the table.
Mr. Chairman, I think I indicated indicated before that motion was seconded. So actually, I'm coming in to speak before Councillor Dorian's motion is seconded. So what I'm moving is that we refer this matter back to Cabinet for further reconsideration, setting out in writing the concerns which we have. And I would hope that Jeanette has got enough from the concerns that we've outlined fundamentally that this decision comes to full council, and fundamentally that GMLC cannot be decommissioned until a replacement is ready for opening. That those concerns are taken back to Cabinet to give Cabinet the full opportunity to listen to what this committee has had to say, because that's the right and proper way that scrutiny works, is that we have scrutinized this, we have spotted the problems, we have discussed them, we have sought the assurances. What we need to do now, Mr. Chairman, is to send this back to Cabinet to allow Cabinet to accept what we have said, acknowledge and confirm that what they have reassured, what Councillor Welton has reassured us of this evening, and then let the processes follow through to full council as has already been advertised. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. This situation, Jeanette, are you there?
Chairman, yes.
Now, procedurally, I suspect that
Well, procedurally,
someone would want to second Councillor Ashton's recommendation, but I think, if I'm correct, that the motion we have on the table must be considered first. Is that not so? Am I right?
yes, Chairman. Yes, Chairman. And
right.
I know Councillor Ashton was indicating before it was seconded, but the fact is it was his proposal would be simply in effect a direct negative. So we really need to take Councillor Dorian's proposal first.
Thank you. Right. Now, so procedurally, do I ask Councillor? Actually, I can ask. Yes, Jeanette, tell me.
Sorry, Chairman. There are two other councillors indicating, Councillor Judith Skinner and Councillor Brian Rush. And I didn't know whether you wanted to ask if any other committee or non-committee member wish to speak who haven't yet spoken, though none are indicating.
Right. Well, I've got. Well, I thought I had Councillor Judith Skinner in front of me. Did that disappear? Yes, she's come back again, hasn't she? Right. So we'll go to Councillor Judith Skinner, and then we'll go to Councillor Brian Rush, I think. And anybody else who wishes to speak, we can be here all night. There's not a problem. I don't mind if we're here till midnight.
There's people who need to work, Mr. Chairman, next day. Please, we're not all retired. You have the privilege.
I know I'm past it, but don't worry about it, Councillor Danny.
Thank you.
Just looking forward to a coffin right now. Councillor Judith Skinner, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I was just going to say that I agree with Councillor Tom Ashton's appraisal of the situation, and at that stage I didn't know whether what the order was going to be, and I was going to second it. So to that, I will do that.
Right, well, we have that on record, okay, but we have a motion in front of us, but we have a second motion then technically following along behind if the first one falls, if I'm correct in my procedures. And I'll be corrected if I'm not, won't I? So Councillor Brian Rush. Brian? Councillor Rush? Brian?
Oh, Chairman, can you just give me a moment?
Sure.
I may need to.
Take your time. Don't worry.
I'm trying to. Councillor Rush, are you able to unmute yourself?
Come on, Brian.
I'm trying to unmute him, Chairman, but it seems to be that he'll need to do that himself.
Can you ring him up? Perhaps Anne can give him a ring and tell him to unmute.
I texted him, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Anne.
Councillor Alison Austin is indicating, Chairman.
Right. Well, perhaps we'll go to Councillor Alison Austin and then come back to Councillor Brian Rush when he's available, if that's all right. Can we go for that?
I'll put my video on for a moment.
Right, Alison, off you go.
Chairman, I really don't feel I can see the point of it coming back to full council when it's going to come to full council anyway on the 26th of this month. It's you're doing the same thing twice. Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's politics. Councillor Bedford, do you want to come forward? Peter?
Yes, come in, Chairman. Or I
Please
think
come in.
I am.
Well, I've got your name in front of me, but I haven't got your picture. Jeanette, can we bring in Councillor Peter Bedford? Well done. Technology is wonderful. Off we go. Councillor Peter Bedford, you have something to say?
Yes, Chairman. Mr. Leader has promised that he will look into things and send us information through. Cabinet is around the 8th or 9th, I think, of October, which isn't going to give them a lot of time, whereas if all the information is sifted and sent through, we also have the presentation evening through to all members, then I agree that it should go directly to full council, because otherwise it can go to cabinet and it's still after that has got to come to council. So why bother sending it to the cabinet? They can have their informal discussion at their informal meeting. But if it comes direct to cabinet, to me, sorry, to full council, that makes far more sense. And that is the way I'll be voting, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bedford. Yes, Jeanette?
Chairman, just to clarify, that Cabinet is on the 21st of October.
Right.
Councillor Tom Ashton and then Councillor Alison Austin are now indicating.
Any success with Brian Rush?
Not so far, Chairman. Sorry.
Mr. Chair, he has texted back to say he's got no reception.
Right. Oh, thank you very much, Anne. Thank you very much. Right. Well, if I'm correct in this, I think Councillor Tom Ashton signalled before Councillor Alison Austin. Am I correct in that?
I've been signalling on and off for some time,
Right,
but
then
I
there you
will.
go.
So, if I could possibly seek clarification on a couple of points. The first one is, could we have some kind of information on or advice from Mr. Leader or from Councillor Welton or from Jeanette as to what the effect would be of this committee voting to refer the matter to full council for debate. Does that mean that there will be an additional item on the agenda specifically on the item 3 that was on the cabinet papers that is the subject of this call-in, or would it be possible to encompass that within the wider debate that's going to be had on the town steel? And is it necessary? And are there any implications in doing that? Is that going to have a negative impact on the work that's going into preparing the bid, the town deal bid, and everything else as a part of that?
Mr. Leader?
Well, I'll express a view, Chairman, but whether I should do is Jeanette will pull me up if I get anything wrong. I mean,
probably.
It seems to me that what we've been talking about tonight has certainly addressed the question of why I asked recommendation 3 to be considered by cabinet, but it's been a much more wide-ranging and interesting discussion than just that narrow point. And it does seem to me that actually in discussing the Towns Fund bid document, you're going to be able to range across the whole range of issues that you've quite properly looked into tonight. And should you so wish in your debate, focus in on the particular point that I have caused you to consider tonight. So speaking for myself, I would have thought that you don't need to refer this matter to full council in order to have the kind of debate you'd like to have at full council. But that doesn't, of course, mean you can't do it, and it's your council, and should you decide you want to do it, then I can see no reason of a sort of procedural nature that prevents you from doing so. So I see the force of argument for saying, well, kill two birds with one stone by debating the Towns Fund paper, But should you decide you don't want to do that, well, then you can have 2 items on the agenda if you want, but they will, I suppose, replicate each other. So to that extent, it would probably, from an officer's point of view, not be a good idea, to be frank.
Thank you for your advice. Thank you for your advice. I think I will probably just add that it is quite a sensitive topic, and I suspect that people will want absolute total reassurance on this and wouldn't want it necessarily to be buried in other documents. This is a key issue for very many people in the town who are maybe will be listening in tonight and who want absolute reassurance on it. And I think that's why people may want to have that specific area debated again. I suspect that it is a very, very important point that the pool, the GLMC, is highly rated inside the town, even though it's obviously getting on in years, as I am. It's still an issue, and I think that's why we'll have to consider that. Now, I want to go to Councillor Austin, I think, who's got a hand up. Can I go to Councillor Austin, please? Councillor Alison, are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
Right, well, the floor's yours.
Oh dear. Right, thank you. It seems to be coming round rather often.
Good thing.
Is there time to bring it to council before this other council meeting? Or I still feel if this could be really a separate, it could even be an amendment, but I'd rather it was a separate item on the council meeting that we're going to have. Otherwise, we just seem to be going round and round and round. No, I think I'm still prefer it just to go to the full council on the 20, whatever the date is.
26.
I really don't feel that we can be, I mean, am I just sort of the only one who feels we'll be doing this, to death if we discuss it then? Or look at it this way, if we discuss it in advance, is it going to have any negative, perhaps this is how I should have put it, if we have a full council meeting sometime before the 26th, is it potentially going to have any negative impact upon the proposal that's going to full council at the end of October, please?
From an officer point of view, I think it will be very distracting, because I can tell you it's Miss Rustling, who is working on getting these bids together, will, I think, have to make a significant input into this report. She'd need to certainly inform you as to the implications of different kinds of decision. And I think that would be unhelpful. The other thing I'd say is this, that unless there's something in the Constitution, and we can be told about that by Ms. Collier, that my view would be, in any event, you'd have 2 items on the council agenda. One would be the Towns Fund and one would be this. And I suspect the mayor might exercise his right to take the 2 together, actually, on the same agenda. So it seems to me that we wouldn't be likely to call a special council meeting unless there's a right to that. That being said, there'd be 2 items on the same agenda and they'd probably be taken together. So to that extent, this may be an interesting debate, but it may be generating more heat than light.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Right.
I'm still unmuted.
I'm sorry. Do you want to carry on, Alison?
Right. If we leave this to the actual council meeting then at the end of the month, what are the negative implications of that?
There aren't any, I don't think. I can't see any difficulty in that, because by then Miss Rustling would have finished her report, will have killed 2 birds with 1 stone, in effect, in that way. You take the 2 items together, debate them together. Members would have their say, but it would be on a properly informed basis.
Thank you.
Right, and one third question, if I may.
Oh, go on, yes, that's right.
Well, come on, get my money's worth.
Well, yes.
Would there be any negative impact or positive impact if this went to cabinet? In other words, I'm mindful of what was possibly going to be put forward by Councillor Ashton. What negative or positive impact could there be from that?
Well, I think the only downside would be that by then Miss Rustling's report would not be ready for council's consideration and therefore not ready for cabinet's consideration, I don't think. I would rather that Miss Rustling was given the opportunity to finish her work to the highest possible standard, get it in front of council, having heard what the Towns Board say about it, made any changes, so that you're debating that document, which we think is as good as can possibly be. I mean, at the end of the day, we'll do whatever members want, but from my own point of view, I'd rather give you as close to the finished product as I can, or I'd give you the finished product on the 26th and let you make a thoroughly good job of debating it without nowhere to hide, because it's the best shot that we can take.
Okay. Right.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
just a minute. I need to make sure that Councillor Austin is finished.
Yes, I have finished. I'm going to say, I'm going to mute myself now and turn my video off and wave you goodbye.
All right, thank you, Councillor Austin. Councillor Belton.
Yeah, it's just, it might be helpful, Chairman, if we look at the three decisions that were the reason for the call-in, or the
just one, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, the one, but the other two are quite important. The first one, in particular, that Mr. Leader's instructed report back to the next cabinet on the budget cost steps specified. The report should identify the approach to procurement which should reflect particular priority, urgency, etc., etc. If scrutiny is minded to refer it back to cabinet, we've already given assurances in the public domain that no demolition or no plans will be made until we have a like for like or better provision. We've also agreed with everything else that scrutiny is wanted. I would like it to come back to cabinet so that I can amend the report, and I'm sure Mr. Leader would put that in his report that is due to come to next cabinet, and then that then would be part of the report that would then go to council. So all members would have, you know, you've called in the decision of cabinet, you've sent it back to cabinet, you've told us off in the politest way, we've amended the report at the next cabinet, which is in October, before council. That report then goes to full council. It's done the proper process going through, and it makes it clean. And then when you come to full council, every member will be able to get into the debate on the town fund, of which this is part of it. So whether you send it back to cabinet or not, the amendments that we've promised this evening will be put into that report that comes to the next cabinet, which is prior to council.
Thank you, Councillor Welton. I did have Councillor Tom Ashton around, but has he? You've come back, Councillor Tom Ashton. Right now, Tom, you've got the floor again.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting listening to the comments just there and the clarification, and thank you very much for answering my questions and also those of Councillor Austin. I think both myself and Councillor Austin were pursuing very similar lines of inquiry. And the reassurance appears to be that if the decision of this committee is to refer the matter to full council, then that is no impediment on the progression of the bids and reports and everything else that is in the course of gestation. And it will still be possible to deal with the two items effectively at the same time, because the thrust of my argument to this point was to have the whole thing on the council agenda as one item, and then this small component which we have debated at length tonight as a separate item for a separate debate, simply repeating what we've said tonight, but in front of full council, would be to over-egg it, and the second one would simply be irrelevant in view of the big item, which is going for the whole town deal application and everything associated with it. But the fact that it is suggested that these may be taken as one thing, I would be content to support referring the matter to full council for debate, providing it can be done in that way, providing it's not going to be unnecessarily time consuming or disruptive, so that we can simply move this on and give members at full council every opportunity to debate every facet of it. But at the same time, I would acknowledge incredible gratitude and for the reassurances that Councillor Welton has given, and just reinforced there very, very clearly that everything that has been asked for by this committee will be done.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Thank you very much for that. Yes, Tom, it's been very good for you to reveal it, everything as you see it. I think it's very, very important for members to express themselves fully. I like the idea of a continuous debate, so that people really have the chance to say what they feel. That's how scrutiny should be. People explaining exactly how they feel. Councillor Bedford, I think I'll make you the last one, because we'll have to go to a vote shortly. Otherwise, we'll be running out of time. So, Councillor Bedford, do you want to say anything?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I was just pleased to hear what Tom had to say a couple of minutes ago. There's nothing to stop Cabinet debating this anyway and preparing the paper to come to full council, and we can take them together. So, you know, I still think the recommendation refer the matter to full council for debate is correct. And I also move that we now go to the vote, Chairman.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to hear that, Councillor Bedford. Now,
I'll
Jeanette,
second that, Chairman.
yes. Now, Jeanette, we need to go to the vote now, I think, because time will run out on us, really. Strictly speaking, I didn't start the meeting till 6:40, so I think we've got 8 minutes.
Yes, that's correct, Chairman. I'll take the vote now then. So it's the vote on referring the matter to full council for debate, and that will be at the council meeting on the 26th of October. That's been proposed and seconded. If members of the committee could indicate whether they're for, against or abstain. Councillor Ashton.
For.
Councillor Austin.
For.
Councillor Bedford.
For.
Councillor Bell.
For.
Councillor Danny.
For.
Councillor Dorian.
For.
Councillor Hasty.
For.
Councillor Pickett.
For.
Councillor Skinner.
For.
Councillor Woodliff, Chairman.
For.
That's unanimous, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Right, now I'm going to close the meeting. I think that's correct, isn't it, Jeanette? Jeanette? Am I now?
It is, Chairman.
Right,
it is. It is.
Right. Well, I want to thank.
Chairman, and as host.
Sorry?
Please carry on.
Right. I was going to say, I want to thank all members for attending tonight, and in particular, all officers. I want to thank all the officers for their contributions. It's been a really useful meeting, an excellent meeting. And I want to thank all the councillors for expressing their ideas and views so clearly. This is exactly how scrutiny should be, in my opinion, open and clear. Thank you very much indeed, all members, for attending. And I'm now going to close the meeting. So thank you very much, and good night, I think it's it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you for being such brilliant members. Good night.